Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another session of Latino World Travelers Expert Sessions. I am so excited that you are here joining us for this special event. So expert sessions are virtual events that Latino World Travelers started hosting, where we bring thought leaders and experts in the travel industry to share information, conduct workshops, or lead discussions for you, our community of travelers, influencers, and content creators. And my name is Vanessa, by the way. I am the founder of Latino World Travelers, and you can feel free to follow me, my adventures, and make sure you engage with me because I love meeting you. But today, before we start, I just want to give a couple of housekeeping ideas. Use the chat to ask any questions. Please engage with us, with the attendees. Share your experiences as the presentation is going on. Q&A will follow the presentation, so make sure to stay on so you can have all of your questions answered. And please mute yourself during the presentation. This way we avoid any background noises. Replays will be available on our YouTube channel, and you will also receive an email from us with the link of the video. Remember our goal, and we are here really to spark your curiosity for travel, but also to grow in education, because our goal is to be able to go out there in the world and diversify the face of travel. And this is one way that we can make it happen, how we can make an impact in the communities that we go to as well. So let's continue dreaming, discovering, and inspiring other Latinos, which is our motto. And like I said, being impactful in the places that we travel. Now, without further ado, we have here with us today Harry Alvarez, and please make sure you follow him at Harry and Manuel, because he has had over a decade of experience in Caribbean and Central American travel, and is also the co-founder and COO of Offbeat Travel Experiences. He bridges cultures and nations, specializing in student travel and enriching the journey of young adventurers. He's going to be joined today by Felipe Hernandez, who is in Costa Rica, and he has a lot of knowledge in the field and will bring in some really nice perspectives as well on sustainable travel and how to strengthen communities through local businesses. So I'm so excited. I'm really looking forward to this enlightening session. Thank you so much for being here. And Harry, it's all yours. The floor is all yours.
Thank you. If you could just stop sharing so I can share my screen.
Let me replace the screen.
No worries. Let me know when you can all see my screen. I think we're good. Hi, everybody. Again, I'm Harry. I'm from Offbeat Travel. I'm the founder and COO of Offbeat Travel. And we're going to talk today a little bit about sustainable tourism. We like to say that, sustainable tourism isn't like adult travel or student travel or honeymoon travel. It's not a segment of tourism, but rather it's tourism done right. Then that's what we're going to talk about today. So talk a little bit about what Offbeat Travel is. Me and my co-founders Ricardo and Weiner started working in travel together about 15 years ago. Ricardo actually hired me as a program leader, running experiences out in Costa Rica and Central America, mostly for students. At that time, I thought I was going to go to medical school. I watched The Motorcycle Diaries one too many times, and I thought I was going to be the next Che Guevara, saving the world. And then kind of life changed my plans, and I ended up in Costa Rica leading experiences for students and realized that there was really more than one way to help, and really sparked my love for experiential learning, and also made me realize that all those trips I'd taken back to my parents' homeland of the Dominican Republic were considered travel, and I'd been traveling my whole life ever since I was 6 months old. Weiner was a co-leader of mine, and now we founded Offbeat Travel together. We have teams in the Dominican Republic, and something I like to highlight about our teams is that they're diverse. And when we talk about diversity, a lot of the time we talk about it from the context of the US, because that's where a lot of us are, and that's where, the kind of dominates the conversation. But also we have to think about diversity when we, travel to the places that we visit, and think about who we're supporting. Are we unintentionally supporting systemic racism in the DR by only working with, certain vendors or certain places, visiting certain places? So we really want to look at a diversity of groups. So on our team, we have Dominican Haitian, people from all over the island, who bring different perspectives. Same thing in Costa Rica. See Felipe there. We have a diverse team of people who come from different parts of Costa Rica, um, and who bring a different perspective on things. And it's not just the one narrative of the story, which is a big part of sustainable tourism, is making sure that you're getting different narratives of the places that you're visiting. So talked a little bit about I was born in New York. At 6 months old, my parents moved back to the Dominican Republic, and then back to the Bronx when I was 8. So I'd always kind of gone back and forth between the Dominican Republic and New York. After college, I found work with Rustic Pathways in Costa Rica, and have been working in the industry since then. And I've led programming in Costa Rica, Panama, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, the US, and Cuba. And I specialize in student travel. And I'll let Felipe introduce himself.
Thank you, Harry. So yeah, like for me, I'm born and raised here in Costa Rica, and so I start travel in Costa Rica to different places and stuff, and I realized how passionate I was about finding new places, discovering new areas and talking to people. So I decided to start studying tourism, and after that I started working in different environmental NGOs in the country, and I still love that. So I started to continue studying and having more information in order that we can do better projects in the communities and stuff. So I decided to have a master's degree in environmental management and local development. And after that, I switched and I started working in student travel industry. And so that's how I found out about Offbeat. And I started working here and started doing different projects, different programs for students and different people. And so I started working here and continue putting my passion in every program that we design and things like that. And since then, I'm super happy. And every time that we have students or people traveling, we have this new way to transmit and try to put the local recipe in our programs and try to transfer that to the people that travel with us.
Awesome. And I know, so me and Felipe oftentimes will mention students, because we work a lot with students. But recently, I've started to use the term student for everyone that travels with us, whether you're an adult or whether you're a family, because when we travel, whether we're a teenager or a middle school student, we all learn about something when we travel, and it's a big part of what it is. So when we're traveling, we really are all students. So for the purposes of this discussion, we're going to focus on tourism in the Dominican Republic and Costa Rica. There are two tourism behemoths in the region. We're very different types of tourism. So Costa Rica, since the 80s, has positioned itself as a place that's with their marketing and with their initiatives, that's very much about nature. The conservation has become a part of the ethos, the part of the culture, and that has attracted a type of tourism that's more ecotouristic. And people are actually visiting the national parks a lot. People are going there for the nature. In comparison to the Dominican Republic, where people are going there for the nature, but they're mostly going there for the beaches. And the vast majority of tourism is in all-inclusive resorts along the coast. So two very different places where tourism is developed in different ways. And I'm in the Dominican Republic, and one of the things I really push for in the Dominican Republic is to do more ecotourism, because while the resort-based tourism is great and it should keep continuing to grow, I think we're leaving out a market and we're not competing in that sense. There's so much ecotouristic potential here, that we can open up another market, which is what Offbeat's trying to do in the kind of offering that we offer, is work with rural communities, work in mountainous communities, work in places where in national parks where you might not find a lot of tourists in the DR because it's just not that the kind of tourism that comes here. So why is tourism important? Tourism represents about 10% of the global GDP, 17% of the GDP of the Dominican Republic, and about 9% of that of Costa Rica. It's huge. The economic potential is very big. That's even bigger for other countries in the global south, like Aruba, which is 41% of the GDP for tourism and 37% for the Maldives. So the reality is that tourism as a service is huge potential export for these countries and a huge potential to increase their benefits locally. There's a ton of potential there. So how do we use that economic power in a way that is positive on the communities that we're visiting? And that's what we really want to encourage. So just to give it more perspective, again, tourism is 10% of the global GDP as of 2015. This is information from the World Tourism Organization of the United Nations. It's 1 of 11 jobs. It's about 1.5 trillion in exports, 6% of the world exports, and 30% of the services exports. So it's a huge, huge, huge part of the economy, of the world economy, and it's growing rapidly. So another example for the Dominican Republic, as you can see this, the DR fits 175 times in Brazil, and it gets twice as many tourists. In 2022, we had 7.2 million visitors to the Dominican Republic, and our population is about 10.8 million. So like almost 60% of our population, about the same amount, traveled to the Dominican Republic. And with tourism as a primary driver, the DR is expected to be one of Latin America's fastest growing economies this year. So we actually haven't, while the DR, because of tourism, has come out of COVID in a very positive way, especially the way they handled COVID. They made tourism workers frontline workers, so they were first line in line for vaccines and that kind of stuff. They were able to open up the doors for tourists pretty quickly in a safe manner and really position themselves in a really positive way. Same thing with Costa Rica in the way they opened back up to tourism in a very good way. And that has really sparked a lot and kept these economies going pretty well, even through inflation crises that we've been seeing recently. Yet in the Dominican Republic, there exists huge economic disparities. So we have the highest percentage of luxury cars in the Caribbean, but the lowest investment in public education. So not all of the money is going to the people that need it the most. So how do we use tourism as a way to get more of the economic power into the hands of the people that need it the most? And I'll let Felipe talk about Costa Rica's tourism numbers a little bit.
Yes, thank you, Harry. So like in terms of Costa Rica, as Harry mentioned, like almost like the 90% is our GDP. So in this graphic, you can see how important is tourism for the country. So like back in the early 2000s, Costa Rica reached like the 1 million visitors per year. And from that, we continue like increasing year by year. And so after that, after this huge number of visitors, like Costa Rica started creating more things regarding tourism, like creating like spaces where people can like have like taking courses in order to prepare to receive like tourism in the country. And after this, like the war started like noting Costa Rica like even more. And also like all these visitors per year is not by coincidence, it's because also like the country has like a good structure in environmental like resources like conservation, sustainability. Also like in terms of safety, like Costa Rica is a safe destination for travelers like around the world and even in Central America. And also like the political stability that we have in the country. So it's safe. We have like good healthcare and things like that, that not even for the locals, but also for the visitors, like we can provide like good resources when they require. So nowadays, like tourism is like a big part. And then you can see like in this graphic, like when COVID strike us, we have like a huge gap in that year, and the country was like suffering because a lot of people lose their jobs because of this. But after that, we start like recovering and recovering, and we can say like probably like for the next year or the following, we're going to come back on the same numbers that we used to have like before the COVID. And the following. So when we were like preparing this presentation, I saw this news on the newspaper about like Costa Rica, how Costa Rica is like a favorite destination for different places, like including United States, Canada, Mexico, and some countries in Europe. And so this was a research made in 2022 by the Too Much company. And so people, they were like asking like people, like if you are going to travel, which are the places that you are going to visit? And like in the 20 position, Costa Rica was in there, and even like in a lot of destinations, like in the top 10. So a lot of people mention it because of nature and because of people. And so like for me as a Tico, as a Costa Rican, I can say like those two components are super important, because like Costa Ricans love nature and we always try to protect it. And also because of the people, because it's super warm, like welcoming, and always try like to give like I don't know, like always try to be super kind with the visitors. And those two things is what I can say is create our Pura Vida lifestyle that is very familiar with the people who visit us.
Okay, so tourism's huge, so what? What we want to talk about, and what we're trying to push for at Offbeat Travel is, how do we harness that huge potential, that huge economic potential of tourism as a force for good? So how do we make it so like the money gets into the hands of the people that need it the most? How do we do it in a way that encourages and develops the local labor force? How do we use it as an avenue for sustainable development? So how do we use it to help communities in need through service projects, or through some kind of offset of the percentage of the people, of the amount of people pay that goes towards some kind of project or something like that? We just working on our impact report at Offbeat Travel right now. And for example, in the Dominican Republic for the 2023 year, 7% of our revenue went directly to either materials or labor or consulting for a community impact project. So how do we encourage more companies to invest in those kind of ventures, so that and Felipe will talk about it less, so like later. So like, let's say we invest in an ecotourism project that brings different kind of work to communities that used to farm something that no longer farmed, that's no longer necessary. There's so many potentials. And how do we look at tourism as our new commodity, our new resource, the way that gold and silver during colonialism were seen as resources that, and our land was sucked of these resources. Now, how do we don't want the same thing to happen with tourism, where a lot of the tourism money to go out of the country. How do we make it so the tourism dollars stay within our countries and change the narrative about those tourism dollars? And then most importantly, once we've done those things, how do we behave as responsible tourists when we're traveling? So, and I'll pause here for a second, because of the community that Vanessa has created here, which is a big part infused by the diaspora. And by the diaspora, I mean those of us you were either like Vanessa, who was born in the Dominican Republic and moved to New York, or like me, whose parents moved to New York, and I was born in New York, but I'm Dominican American. The amount of potential that we have because of diaspora is also huge. So if you look at global remittances, it's incredible, the buying power that we have and the amount of good that we're already doing in our communities. How do we rethink those family trips to Mexico or Puerto Rico in the context of being responsible tourists? Because when we're visiting those places, we also have to be responsible and look at those things. How can we invest in our homelands and in our ancestral lands to develop, to like buy that hotel on the coast, or it's not a foreigner or an Italian or a European that owns it, no offense, but it's nice when the lands are owned by the people who trace themselves there a little bit. So if you can, as you can see, $750 billion market last year of remittances going from Latinos and people, immigrants in general, not Latinos, just people from Southeast Asia and Asia as well, and all over the world to their homelands. And that is such a big that it would be, if you combine the remittances of Latin America, it would be Latin America's seventh biggest economy. And actually remittances flowing to lower middle income countries are tracked to reach 626 billion this year, which exceeds the official development aid by 3 times. So that means that there is more money going to these places through remittances that there are going to like the World Bank or the IMF or like those kind of development associations or those big NGOs that you hear that are doing great work. They're doing great work, but so are the people sending money back home to their communities. So how do we not just think about sending money back home, but how do we also think about investing in our homelands and specifically in tourism, given that it's such a big part of the economy of these places, of many of these places. So that was my segue because of the crowd that we have here today. So what can we do? What we like to talk about a lot is preventing leakage. There's a really great movie put together by the folks from G Adventures called The Last Tourist. It's on Netflix. I highly recommend it. It's about this specific topic and it goes into it really deeply. But leakage in the context of tourism refers to the portion of the revenue, so like the money that basically the money that you pay to go on your trip in a destination that does not remain within that destination's economy, but leaks out to other regions or countries. So it's the amount of money that you pay, but doesn't actually go to the Dominican Republic or Costa Rica or Bali. A lot of times this money flows from what should be going to global South nations to developed nations. So it's actually flowing in the wrong direction, in my opinion, because it should stay in the places that need it most, which is these developing nations. And that happens a lot through multinationals and that kind of stuff. So what does leakage look like? So it's foreign ownership, for one. So if you look at a lot of the hotels that you might be visiting, are they owned by Dominicans, Costa Ricans, Mexicans, or are they owned by multinational conglomerates, especially common in resort properties? It doesn't mean that because it's a big brand that it's not local. So that's something. So like there are ways to, for example, the Trip in Isabel in Puerto Rico, they brand as Trip, but the building and the administration is owned by locals, and they pay like a certain fee to use the name. You know, that's okay, but the problem is when all of the money gets sucked out of the countries because it's not locally owned and operated. Same thing with activity vendors, like a dive shop that might be owned by an expat or a zip line owned by operated by a foreign entity. It's also in the form of travel agents, OTAs, online travel agencies like Expedia, Booking.com, that kind of stuff, third-party brands, and global DMCs. So I mean, basically, the closer you can get to the person delivering your experience, the better it is both for that person and for you, because you're probably going to spend less money. So because every person in the middle takes money out, and it usually goes not to the destination. Also in the form of international hotels and restaurant chains, Starbucks in Santo Domingo. Actually, I think Starbucks is a franchise. So I might take that back, as much as I don't like the fact that Starbucks is Santo Domingo. Santo Domingo coffee all the way. In the form of imported goods. So when you go to resort properties, or you go to any resort and they have, or any property, it doesn't have to be a resort, there's a huge buffet and these foods are not from that place. They're not grown there. They're being brought in, or they're bringing in special vodka for you, or they're bringing in all these kind of specialty items that aren't made in the place. Same thing in bundling at resorts, for example. So when you're paying one person for your flight, everything in one bundle, and that's a foreign entity, and they're basically not letting you spend outside of the resort. That's another example where you're not going out to like spend money locally. Cruises are really hard because by design, they don't really leave much in the community they're visiting, because they basically spend very limited time on land. In the form of wages, when I started working at Rustic Pathways, for example, I would say in a staff of 50 my first summer, maybe 8 of us were Latino and maybe 4 or 5 were from Costa Rica. And I wasn't even from Costa Rica. I was Dominican American going to run trips in Costa Rica. What was my business running trips there? And also my wage was being paid in the US. I wasn't going to someone like Felipe in Costa Rica. I was going to a foreigner. In the form of foreign investment, when funding comes from abroad and profits follow typically. We're not against foreign investment, but it can be done in a joint venture with locals. And how do you reduce leakage? So maximize the use of local suppliers, hotels, activities, transportation, everything. Just ask, like, who are the owners? You can usually find them on the website. If you Google a little bit, you can usually find if someone's locally owned and operated pretty easily. Buy locally produced products while in country. So like, yes, eat mangoes in the DR, but don't eat apples in Costa Rica because they don't grow apples in Costa Rica. I don't think so, at least, right, Felipe? So like stuff like that, like, try to eat the things that are from that place, especially because you're visiting a place and you want to experience it. Hire companies, guys, and vendors that abide by local laws and practice fair wages and hiring practices locally. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Well, we'll talk about it now. So basically, you're supporting businesses that follow the rules. So 100% reduction of leakage is not the goal or possible. I would love to be able to tell you that I use all locally owned hotels. That's just not possible. There's just too many foreign owned hotels here, too many foreign owned things. So it's not about that. It's about how do you reduce the amount as much as possible? Because there are reasons to do it. So for competitiveness, like if I was not to use anything that wasn't local, I wouldn't be on LinkedIn or social media or Instagram or Google, and then I would lose a competitive advantage by only staying within my market. And those are things that are by design, because they're foreign companies, I just can't get away from. Same thing when you don't want to compromise safety. So let's say you're looking at 2 ziplining vendors and one of them is local but has a really bad safety rating, and the other one foreign owned but has a really good safety rating. Err on the side of safety. But at the same time, and I'll go to my last point, maybe work with that vendor to help them increase their safety standards. And that's more on the kind of stuff that we can do as a company. But when we do that kind of stuff, Felipe is going to talk about that later. Promote healthy investment and competition. So promoting investment and that includes local partners. You hope ideally like a 50-50 or more. So like, the local partners retain ability to guide this investment. And also healthy competition. A lot of the times, local business groups are not included at the table because our governments are very easy to go look for foreign investments. And also just following the same rules. So I've been working in tourism for 15 years, and I've worked for many companies, and I've seen how people operate. And I myself have done things that I just, looking back, I'm like, why did I do that? Like, I ran an operation in Panama for my former employer. We had no legal entity. I would literally take cash into the country and that kind of stuff. And we need to follow the rules in these places. So, form legal companies, legal entities, contribute to the local tax structures, so that, that local tax structure supports the local public schools and all that kind of stuff. Paying employees on the books and providing benefits to local hires. These are things that are a lot, like in travel, not that we tend to forget it, but because there are travel agents and companies that operate in so many countries, they focus on legal compliance where they are based. So in that case, a lot of times it's legal compliance in the US. So be very careful about how they hire, employ, pay US employees, but they can feel like they can break the rules a little bit or bend the rules when they go to Costa Rica or the Dominican Republic. So we need to reduce that, and they're going to make it a little better. Yeah, supporting local businesses to increase the quality of safety standards. So just some of the things that we can do to kind of support, reduce leakage. Oops. Oh. And above all, what you really, if I can kind of sum it into all, is work with locals. At the heart of travel are the communities we visit. We gain so much from them. And when we travel, we need to make sure there's a two-way street, that we're not taking more than we're giving. And for, like I was saying, like who's better to guide a group of travelers to Costa Rica or the Dominican Republic than someone who's from that place or traces their heritage there. So partner with local providers around the world to empower them and give them a voice at the table. Sorry. Oops. And to do that, you also need to change your mindset and how you think about tourism and how you think about travel and what the goals of it are. And I'll let Felipe talk for a bit. I'm losing my steam here.
Thank you, Harry. So yes, like so far, we've been talking about how huge tourism is for different places, like the important it could be for the economy of the countries, and also like how many people is traveling year by year. But what if we change our mindset regarding traveling? And what I want to say about this is that stop traveling with no sense. Like it's fine to follow this impulse to travel because it's super cool, like to find and discover new places. And but what if we do like a little research before traveling? And like for example, like know a little bit about the destination, about the company that you're going to use, about the location that you want to visit, and the expectation that you have once you are there. And if we do this like before every single trip that we do, I can guarantee that the experience is going to be like completely different than you used to be. The following, Harry. So with this, I want to introduce this big topic that is responsible travel or responsible tourism. And so in here, we have like two types of people who travel around the world and even in the same country. So like we have a tourist and a traveler. Like a tourist is like a normal people like who travel without no sense, just like choose like a destination, like a popular destination and go there and that's it. But also we can have like this traveler style that they try to take advantage of the places that they go. And when you take advantage, it means that you can go to a place, learn from the locals, like find different dishes, like find different things to do, and have like this cultural immersion in the place that they travel. And also by becoming like more responsible in our trips, we can choose where your money goes. So as Harvey was mentioned about the leakage, so with this we can choose that our money, like every time that we travel, can stay in a local community, in a local vendor, and supporting those businesses. And so for example, like something that I always love to do when I travel is to stop in a supermarket and just buy a juice, an ice cream, something like that, and talk with people. And like doing something like that is free. Like talking to people is free. You can like finding new places, like for example, a waterfall or a local party or whatever that you can join or visit and have like a real experience in the place that you're traveling. So every time that you're traveling, you have the chance to know the locals, the experience is going to be completely different. And both for the people who is travel and also for the locals, because in most of the places, people love to talk with people from our country and also like love to share the things, the culture that they have in their place. And so in this industry, we understand that we have like different styles, different type of people who travels. Some of them love to be like in fancy hotels and other ones are like okay in staying in rustic places. It doesn't matter where you go, like applying those things like, you know, like talking to locals, like stopping in a supermarket, like go to a different restaurant and things like that can make like the experience is going to be like better and more cool for both the people who travel and the locals. Now, in terms of like how positive can be tourism, I want to share with you like some examples that we have in Costa Rica. Like in this picture, you can see like the Caribbean side in a place that is called Tortuguero. Nowadays, it's a national park, and next to the national park is like a small village of Tortuguero town. But back in the day, this place used to be like a famous place for selling sea turtles. And so like different ships arrive in that place, and people buy turtles and take it away from the country, and they use it for like eat the flesh, like the meat and stuff like that, and also to use the shell to create like aircraft and sell it. So history say that on that time, like people used to roll like around 100 turtles per day in the season and sell it. And so in the black market, a dead sea turtle can cost around $350, and that money goes only to one person, only one time. And because of that bad practice, the population of sea turtles start decreasing a lot. So a lot of research start like going to Tortuguero, like back in the 60s and the 70s, and start like doing this research about this population of sea turtles. And those people who go there for the research require transportation, require food, accommodation, and somebody to teach them where the turtles were. And so they don't even realize in that time that that was tourism. And so because the research needs those things like accommodation, food, and stuff, they start paying money for that, and they realize the value of the turtle alive instead of killing it. And so nowadays, like a single person can give around like 100, like $1,000, like several times for a same turtle. So it means like different people are traveling to Tortuguero using like different services like transportation, accommodation, and stuff, and they pay for that to see the sea turtle alive. So because of that, people start changing their mindset, like the locals, and stop killing the turtles and stop protecting the turtles, because they realize how important it was for the ecosystem and also for the social benefit of the community, because they have like another income, another jobs that they can show like different people about the culture and the interaction with wildlife in that area. The following. Also, we have another example of how positive it could be. So this one is more like in the highlands of the country, in a place that is called Cerro de la Muerte. So it's like the highlands of Costa Rica. And we have like this example of this family, like the Serrano family. So they bought this huge piece of land, like a forest, and they built like this little lodge. They start like a familiar businesses. And so they took tourists to that place and start like showing like this bird that we saw in the picture that is called quetzal, and people start paying for that. However, like there was like a lot of people living around or surrounding that land. They have another way of living, and they used to farming and cattle in that area. So they start cutting all the forest down. So it doesn't matter that they protect their forests. If people start like cutting everything around, the population of birds start decreasing. So they create like this initiative that is called Amigos de Quetzal, like Friends of the Quetzal. So it's a project that they invite all the farmers around and start saying, hey, if you keep part of the forest in your land and you have this bird in your territory, you can call us and we can take people there and we pay you for that. So they start like creating this new system and start like working. So once they start with one family, like with one farmer, and that farmer start like spreading the word with the others, everybody start doing the same thing and start calling this company, hey, we have a quetzal in our property, so if you want to bring your people here, we are more than happy to have them. So they start receiving like buses from people and having like their like the tour in their farms, and they're starting paying the 100% of the money goes to the families. So because of that, people also start like changing their mindset about tourism and start like doing a positive thing, protecting the forest, and also receive an income about that. And also like the main company to bring the people there and start sharing with the others. So that could be like and also like a good way to use like the positive impact of tourism in the country.
Thanks, Felipe. And that's, these kind of examples is what drives our mission at Offbeat, which is to decolonize travel and create equity in the travel industry by ensuring the people in the places we visit have ownership of the design, implementation, management, and economic benefits of travel to their communities. So the idea being, you empower places like Quetzal, a community run operation that then brings a different kind of income to these communities, and they can benefit from the tourism that comes to their areas directly. Increasing those kind of initiatives is crucial and a really important way of promoting sustainable development, of promoting conservation. If we can start adding that added value to our nature of, it's not just that it's beautiful to look at, but people want to come see this. How do we protect it so that we can keep using that and encourage? Because the reality is that as much as altruistic as we all want to think we are, a lot of the times we think with our pockets or with the reality of how do we take care of our families. So if we can make an economic incentive to conserve these areas, then it create, they're more likely to get protected. So that was our presentation, talking about how we think tourism can be run a bit more sustainably through reducing leakage and supporting local communities and local operations. If anybody has any questions, this would be a great time for it. If not, I understand. Or do you have anything else to add, Felipe?
No. I think that's great, Harry.
Yeah, and I saw Sarah was commenting around kind of like the lack of resources around how to find local operators. So that's very true. Now, I mean, I hadn't thought about it too much because what we do is we try to partner with brands, and those brands are looking for someone like us. So I'll give you one example. We work a lot with student travel brands. And we realized that most of our student travel brands, the kids were traveling, were mostly white and affluent. And we really wanted to diversify that. So we sought out a partner in Global Glimpse that was very diverse. They provide the programs to the kids at cost. And it's a mixed income model. And all of a sudden, the diversity of our traveling public diversified. So what I'm trying to say is like some of these things happen. Like I think it's also about how do we make these kind of bigger organizations, bigger corporations change their practices too. So it's not up to the individual traveler. Awesome. Well, thanks. I don't know, Vanessa, if you have any questions or comments. I think
One of the questions that they ask in the chat is, it is a big challenge to build awareness one traveler at a time. Have there been any efforts to reach out to cruise lines and travel companies to promote these local suppliers?
Yeah, cruises are tough. But I'll give you, there was I think it was Phantom Cruises a few years ago, tried an initiative where they were actually adding a community service component to their cruise. The staff, the people were going off the boat and doing a service project in the communities. Not sure how much of it, how it panned out. But cruises are tough because by design, you're not, leaving anything in country. But we've talked to some cruise ship companies about what some of the things they can offer when they come on off board. It's hard because their business model is built about everything being on this boat. So they don't really want to have to spend money off because it really cuts their bottom line. So it's a tough industry it's a tough nut to crack. But we're definitely making efforts to reach out to companies. And what we highlight is the fact that we're locally owned and operated and that we operate sustainably, and not just sustainably when it comes to the environment, but when it comes to our business, and also that we promote the local labor forces and that kind of stuff. So it's a big part of who we are as a company. And I think if we can encourage other companies to do this as well and speak up more and be in these kind of forums, then it helps spread the word about this kind of tourism, and hopefully, But the reality is that, you know, if we get more travelers, if more travelers sign up for like working with companies like ours, or like this other company, like G Adventures is a great adult travel brand that does great work and has a really good reputation for sustainability. Tripseed in Thailand. You know, there's a whole, there are networks of companies that are locally operated. We're part of one called the Inbound Travel Group. But there's also the Collective for Travel. There's a lot of like groups of locally owned operators that are starting to band together to try to go to market together, because the reality is it's really hard to compete with a company like Intrepid. Intrepid's great. They do a really good job for the, you know, they have a really good team, but there are companies that's based in Australia that have, you know, operations in like 100 countries. And so a lot of the profits still go back to Australia. So how do we support local businesses in that way too?
I loved how you mentioned that how can we invest in our homeland, like owning property and like owning the land itself, not letting these big corporations or people, you know, own them.
It's a good investment. I mean, one of my goals in the next 5 years is to buy a piece of land in the Dominican Republic and build my own little eco lodge. And it's a good investment in the sense that, like, you know, you're creating a connection back to your homeland, which I think, I know as a Dominican American, something I always struggled with is like, you know, where do I belong? And, you know, tourism is obviously a growing thing in these parts of the world. So the idea really came to me. My brother has an art gallery, and one of the artists that he represents was visiting me in the DR, and he was talking about he went back to Senegal. He's a black man. He went back to Senegal, and he went to all these places, and they were all owned by Europeans. And he was talking to his tour guide, and he's like, he asked the tour guide, like, what can we do? And he's like, what can you do? Come buy some land here. Come back, like, come represent, because the reality is like you look like me, and these other folks don't. So I think it's like it really does help. Yeah.
We have another question here.
Sorry.
Yes, Danalisi says, I find it harder to find local excursions companies while I'm planning my itinerary from New York City. But when I arrive, I see local companies everywhere at a much lower cost than booking the excursion on websites such as Viator. Is there any way, website, to make sure I am booking? Oh, sorry, I scroll down. Oh. That I am booking with a local owned operator. I understand the local operators may not have the platform to reach me in New York City.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. You know, I have a friend who works for a travel agency in Vermont, and his boss spends like $18,000 a month on Google ads. You know, a lot of these like, you know, small operators can't compete with that to get in your face with Google. So you kind of have to really do your research. You know, obviously Google works. Word of mouth is usually the best. Like asking friends, and then doing local searches and not just searching on Google. Felipe, do you have any other? I feel like Felipe, I thought we talked about this recently. I thought you did a presentation specifically about this one time.
Yes, like regarding that comment, what I wanted to add is that never focus on the price, because like usually when you are like on the field, like walking, you will see like different advertisements with different prices and stuff like that. But unfortunately, you know, people always try to take advantage of the price, but they don't have the insurance, they don't have like the standards or things like that. So it's not like a safe way to travel. And like sometimes, like if you want to like to hire some company that has like everything in rule, it has a cost, like paying for the insurance, like training staff and things like that. So it have a cost. So not every time that we find something that is cheap, it means that it is like local or safe to use. And but also like regarding how to find those places, like depending on the country, they have like different platforms, like a tourism chamber from the areas. Like in Costa Rica, for example, we have a tourism chamber like every single area that we use, but also we have like the tourism institute. They have like a list of companies that is already vet with insurance, like a guide with a license and things like that, that you can like use for sure in a safe way.
Yeah, and I think engaging in these kind of forums. I know I mentioned it before. Earlier today, I presented. We're part of the Cornerstone Safety Group, which is a group of travel industry folks that focus on safety. And we presented to a group. There was like 26 different DMCs presenting to different travel agents and everything. So looking for those forums, they do exist. And also looking, for destination management companies in country. If you look up like DMC Santo Domingo, DMC Dominican Republic, and you start kind of going down that rabbit hole instead of looking for travel agents, you'll have a better chance. And for the travel agents, I saw a comment here about a lot of focus on sustainable travel when it comes to environmental reasons and eco travel. I agree. And you have to be careful because a lot of that is greenwashing. How would you recommend us travel agents to focus on more of the colonialism awareness when planning travel? For instance, I mainly specialize in hosting wellness retreats and want to make sure it was a positive impact on my clients as well as the communities and locations I choose to host that. Great question. Again, yeah, you're right. There's a lot of focus when you talk about sustainability in the environment, but it's also about business sustainability, whether you're supporting a business that's encouraging local sustainability. So my best piece of advice would be to have really strong dialogue with your vendors and ask tough questions. We put all our vendors through a vendor vetting process, which means that we ask them, what safety, how they hire their employees, they hire them on the books. Or we have like this whole questionnaire that we send them, and before they can work with us, they have to do this. And that gives us a really good in-depth look, like whether they're carrying the right travel insurance, whether they're training their staff. A lot of times, especially in tourism, unfortunately, like they don't like to hire people on the books, which is really bad. So they're not contributing to Social Security, they're not getting healthcare, especially the guides. So really kind of like with that vendor vetting, asking those really specific questions. And if you're curious about vendor vetting, feel free to reach out to me, Harry at offbeattravel.us, and I have like tons of forms and can point you in the right direction on that because I'm on the advisory board of the Cornerstone Safety Group. So you can also check out Cornerstone Safety Group, and they very much specialize in vetting vendors and that kind of stuff. I think there was one more. What's the possibility of creating thought leadership groups that can come together to share ideas, offer resources, and promotion of local businesses? For our trips, including the student ones, we ensure we keep sustainability at the forefront as much as possible. So we're always talking with locals and finding ways to help the local community practice eco-friendly and create awareness. I think it's a great idea. So I just talked about the Cornerstone Safety Group. That's literally how it formed. Dave Dennis, who's a colleague of mine, got a bunch of people, travel companies together who wanted to talk about safety and increase the safety standards of the operation. And that turned into like the calls were like, 15, 20 people from competing companies, and they were okay talking about safety. We created a safe space, but we're not competitors anymore. We're just trying to like increase the industry as a whole. So that's when you create a group like that, where people are not focused on their individual company, but they're rather trying to elevate the industry, that's great. So if we can create those kind of a group like that, where we together are like, hey, we don't want these practices. How do we elevate the entire industry and work together to do that? Because if we all do it, then people will follow. If it's just a few of us, then it doesn't happen. So I'd be part of that group. Somebody wants to organize it for sure. Cool. Well, I think that's the last question, and that's just about time. So
Yes. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here, for asking so many questions, and for supporting the communities that you travel to, and for trying to learn more on how to support our communities and be part of their economic changes, the economic growth, and also how to preserve the country in its original forms. Thank you so much. Yes, I love the energy here too. And looking forward to seeing you at the next one. Every month, we're going to have a different expert session. Last month, we had one about affiliate marketing. So make sure you check that one out in our YouTube channel. And next month, we're going to have a different one every month. So be in the lookout for our weekly emails on Sundays, where I send all of our events And looking forward to seeing you at the next one. And if you want to present a session, more than welcome. Just fill up our form in our link in bio to get involved and click in the expert session and present. I welcome everyone. And also, we're going to see you next year at the Latino Travel Fest, which is the big conference that we host as well. So if you want to be a speaker for that, applications are open, and you're more than welcome to submit a panel, workshop, presentation that you would like to do there. More than welcome to do that too. Well, thank you so much, Harry and Felipe, for this wonderful presentation. Let's continue the work so we can make big impacts in the communities that we travel to. Yes, absolutely, definitely follow them on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, the whole 9 yards. Thank you so much again, and nos vemos pronto, chicos.
Thank you. Pura vida.
Thank you. Pura vida. Bye bye.
Sí.